In this video, I'm going to show you how to place a clearer board on your hive and how to remove it. This is a clearer board. It has a maze on the bottom and a hole on the top. The bees go through the hole and then they can work their way through the maze out to the sides. They can't go back through the maze. We place the clearer board between the super that you want to remove and the brood box. We also use an eek, which is a simple piece of equipment, to give the bees space to move out of the super, through the clearer board and down into the brood box. When you remove your super, you'll know how much honey is in it by the weight of it. You might have also checked in it on a previous inspection, but if you can leave the crown board on top of the super, it causes a lot less stress to the bees. So I leave the crown board on when I take off supers. We're putting this clearer board on top of the queen excluder, which sometimes is removed before winter, but I'll show you why we don't remove the queen excluder just at this point yet. The eek goes on first. That's to give space for the bees to move down, and then we put the clearer board on top. If you can put the equipment on at an angle and then turn it into place, it works best and you don't harm bees this way. That's the equipment in place. It's very simple to use and you can see that it doesn't cause stress to the bees. The last thing you need to do is to put your super back in place. Try to get it lined up as carefully as you can. Often those supers are quite heavy, so you need to be very careful. Put the roof back in place and you can walk away. You have to leave it for at least 24 hours to allow the bees to move out of the super and into the brood box, and having a queen right hive helps. So here we are a day later. We're taking the super off. I check in first to see if all the bees are out. Sometimes you have a few that are left in there. This is a really good chance as well to clear off any brace comb that might be on the crown board, because once you take the super off and the clearer board off, the bees are kind of active at that stage. So clear off what you can before you start. Then you can take your super. Only remove the super at this point. Don't take your clearer board yet. Sometimes I give it a little shake to make sure that the bees are all out, and I move it completely away from the hive, because otherwise the bees will start to find the honey again. So I use a trolley for this. When you're removing your clearer board, just be very conscious that there are bees clustered under the board. So the moment that I lift it, I give it a tap, and that dislodges most of the bees from under the clearer board. You'll also notice that I took a little step back to see what was on the ground, because this is when the bees will mostly fall onto the ground and they could crawl up the leg of your suit, so just be very careful. I simply tap off the rest of the bees and I leave it to the side, because there will still be bees trapped in the maze and they will crawl out now that they're in daylight. I use a little bit of smoke then to take the bees out of the eek space and send them back into the brood box, because I have to now remove the eek. Doesn't usually take much to send them back down. There might be bees trying to crawl out over the eek. That's no problem, because we're going to take the eek off and again dislodge the bees by giving it a simple tap. When you're removing supers, you have to be very conscious that you're removing the food source of the bees, and they are protecting this food source very often. So work quickly, calmly, don't panic. There will be bees flying around. They are trying to defend their hive. So use your smoke and be in and out as quickly as you can. Next, you place your crown board back on top of the queen excluder. I'm leaving the queen excluder on here because I'm going to feed these bees. And the reason I leave the queen excluder there is because I don't want the queen to crawl up into the feeder. So I place the eek on to make space for the feeder, and then I'm ready to put the feeder on. If you're like me and you use a lice and polyhive, you're going to have to remove the middle vent plug out of the crown board. This is one job that you'll do and you never have to do it again. but that makes space for the bees to move up into the feeder so they can use the hole then freely. Then I put the plug covers back over the vents for winter. And I will put one plug hole over the center hole so that bees can't move up. But for now, I'm going to use a feeder, so I don't need a cover for it. The feeder will sit on top there. Next, we're going to put the feeder in place. This is a pint feeder. It's very simple to use. The bees crawl up the center hole and they can feed then out of the center. There's a cover that goes over that. That's very important so that the bees don't drown in the syrup. And then there's a lid for over the top so that nothing else can enter in. It's going to go right over that center hole that we've already created. This is the point that I should remind you to wear gloves. I didn't because I'm used to getting bee stings. We remove the cover plug, put the feeder in place with the hole directly above the hole in the crown board. Sometimes there can be bees on the bottom of the crown board where the plug is, and then often you have some bees that enter into that roof space. Try to get rid of them before you put the lid back on. And then you can fill it with syrup. Make sure that cover is on.